Hey guys, today I would like to talk about shaft tapers and how it affects gameplay. Now, I'm creating this video because I had quite a few people reach out to me and asked if I would cover that topic. So I told them that I would, and this will not be a very long video, but hopefully it will be an informative one. Now, you have three main types of shaft tapers. What I'll do is I'll try to hit on each one, comparing the three, and as an end result, give you the pros and cons of all of them. And this will help you, hopefully help you, decide which one that is best for you. Now, the first taper that you have is a pro taper or triple pro taper, both of which serve the same purpose. The second type of shaft taper that you have is a conical taper. The conical taper basically goes from one side of the joint straight taper to the tip. And then you have what's called a hybrid taper. A hybrid taper is a mixture of the two. Basically, in the back end of the shaft, 2/3 roughly, is a conical taper, and then the front third of the shaft is going to be a straight taper. So let's dive into the benefits of both and potential restrictions of all of them. We'll begin with a pro taper. With a pro taper shaft, you're in a situation to where you have, starting at the joint end, you have whatever your joint size is, whether it be 840 or 845 or whatever, you have that joint size, and then it will taper down consistently at one angle to about 10 to 14 inches from the front of the shaft. Once it gets to that point, then the rest of the shaft is straight. Okay. Now, the benefits of having a taper like that. One benefit is, with a pro taper where it's straight in the front, you will have the benefit of comfort, feel, and finesse and accuracy. Where it lacks is going to be in power. You will not have as much power with a pro taper as you will with a beefier shaft like a conical taper. But you will have the ability to, on those important shots, be able to finesse it more, more accuracy, and potentially more English ability and positional play. Now let's move on to a conical taper. A conical taper is where the shaft starts at one diameter and goes in a straight taper to another diameter at the tip. There is no change in angle of the shaft or profile. Now, with that type of shaft, you're going to have more power, and it's more commonly seen on your jump and brake cues, predominantly your brake cues. You have a little bit of lack in spin and English, but on the other hand, some people like the conical taper and can generate just as much spin in English as they can with a pro taper. It really depends on the player and their playing style. If you are an aggressive player and a power player, you may find that a conical taper would benefit you more than a pro taper. If you are a pocket speed player per se, then you may benefit more from a triple pro taper. A couple of the other benefits and cons between the two is, on a conical taper, remember I said that it is a gradual increase consistently from point A to point B. Well, if you think about that, that means that as you're putting it through your bridge hand, your fingers, if you have a closed bridge, your fingers are going to get larger and smaller as you push through that shaft. But also, it means that your position on the cue ball, think about this, you got your cue ball here, and you're aiming dead center, just hypothetically. So you're aiming dead center, okay? Well, as you pull back and push through on the shaft, it's actually due to the constant rise and taper, it's actually raising that tip up some. As you push through, it gets larger, so it raises the center up. Therefore, it's more subject to be higher than you intend or thought that you were. Now, this can be overcame with time. You know, there's a learning curve with any type of shaft that you use. But if power is what you're after, and you are a power player, a very aggressive player, that may be what you're at. That may be what you need. You can get used to it. It just takes time, and you have to be aware of what it's doing or could potentially be doing. Conversely, with a pro taper, that's not the case. As you're stroking through the cue, if you're aiming at center, you're more apt to execute center or whatever position you're trying to hit on the cue ball, because you don't have the expansion of a consistent taper on the shaft. The tip never rises or lowers. It stays where you put it, but due to the consistent diameter for the first 10 to 14 inches. But here again, like I said, you will lack power due to the taper profile. Pro tapers have a tendency to be a little more whippy than a conical taper. A conical taper is going to be beefier, but each have their advantages and disadvantages. Now, to mix that up a little bit more and to make it even more confusing, you have a hybrid taper, and that is a mixture of the two. As I mentioned, with a pro taper, you start with one diameter at the joint, and then it'll come down to a certain diameter, and then it'll reduce to another diameter, and then it'll finalize the last 10 inches or 14 inches with a straight diameter. With a hybrid taper, it's a mixture of a conical and a pro. So it will begin like all three do. It'll begin at one angle, but it'll go straight down to about 10 to 14 inches from the front of the cue. And then at that point, it will immediately go straight as far as zero taper. So the difference there is, and again, that you know, this is pretty close to a pro taper. It's just slightly different. Different in the meaning of you have one angle change versus multiple angle changes in the profile of the shaft. By doing this, you end up having somewhat of the best of both worlds to a degree. You will have more power. You will have the ability to have more positional play, more accuracy. You still have the benefit of the cue not rising as you're stroking through your bridge hand. And it does have a little bit different feel. A pro taper is going to be a nice, smooth, fluid feel. It's going to feel good in the hand. A conical taper, it could take a little getting used to. A conical taper is much like your bar cue. It's a straight shot taper from point A to point B. If you're comfortable with a bar cue and you've been playing with one all your life, well, you may want a conical taper for your personal cue. If you, again, are a finesse type player, pocket speed player, and you can generate the power without the need for a powerful shaft, then a pro taper may be what you're after. It may benefit you. If you are weaker, for lack of better terms, in power and accuracy, then you may want to elect to go for a conical taper. Typically, your conical tapers, and again, this is from point A to point B straight shot taper, typically those shafts are meant for your brake cues and your jump cues because they can generate so much more power. But as I said earlier, some people, and including myself for a time, enjoyed a conical taper during gameplay, typical gameplay. I enjoyed the power of it with less effort, because that's another thing that you have to consider. The more powerful your shaft is, and that is where the power comes from, is in your shaft. Think of it like a piston in a car. Well, your shaft is that piston. And the larger or more mass the shaft has in the middle and back of it, the more power it can generate. So there was a time that I fully enjoyed a conical taper cue. But then again, I grew up, as most everybody else did, playing with bar cues, house cues. So there was a transition period there, you know. When I was 17 to 19, something like that, when I started touring, I made the transition to a pro taper, and it was a rather large learning curve. But once I made that learning curve, I haven't looked back. I can generate the power that I need with a um, pro taper shaft. Some people cannot, and they require a conical taper due to the power that it allows you to have with the same amount of effort. And that's a key point. You don't want, and I've said this time and time again, and I can't emphasize it enough. You do not want to change the way you play. You want to change what you're playing with. Now, what I mean by that is, if you have been playing for 10, 15 years, you've developed all the habits you're going to develop, whether they be good or bad. So it's ingrained in you at that time. And I truly do not feel that you can change the habits that have already been pre-wired into you over that length of time. So at that point, I always encourage changing what you're playing with to adapt to your habits, be it good or bad. And with that being said, then we come into the type of shaft that you would be better playing with. And it does matter. It really does. At the end of the day, the best way to find out what works best for you is to go out there, try different types of shaft profiles and different shaft tapers. You don't have to buy them. The cue that you're currently shooting with has probably got a pro taper on it. Go to the pool room, grab a house cue at the same weight. Try that, because that's going to be a conical taper. And feel the difference in play. Try to not pay attention to the lack of quality in the shaft itself, the shaft finish, and the tip quality and the ferrule quality. Just pay attention to the amount of extra power that you have with a conical taper. And then go back at the end of the day or in the middle and grab the cue that you currently use, which is, again, is probably a pro taper, and do the same routines, same shots. And you'll notice a massive power difference. But don't change how hard or how fast you're hitting the ball. Just play normally between the two, and you'll notice that difference. Again, this wasn't a real long video, and I haven't posted in a while. I've been dealing with other things with this whole MS situation, but I wanted to take the time to briefly explain, and this topic can be discussed all day forever, but I wanted to take the time to briefly hit on the main key points, pros and cons between all three types of shafts. Now, I will say that on the cues that I produce, I use something even different, more different than that. I use more of a sweeping taper. There is no definitive change in angle. It's a fluid motion. Say this is your joint and this is your tip. Mine does not come at one angle, change, another angle, change, and go straight like a triple pro taper. Mine is a fluid sweep to straight. I think that makes for a better shaft, but everybody's different and everybody likes what they like. I'm not saying mine is better than anybody else's. It's just what I like on my cues and the cues that I produce. I hope you've liked this video. I hope it was at least informative to you. It's not the most exciting one, I'll grant you, but it is informative. And if you found it to be, and you found it useful and helpful to you, please take the time to like and subscribe to our channel. Leave some comments. Ask a few questions if you like. Better yet, give me some more topics, single topics, to create a video on next time. The more topics you can give me, the more videos I will create. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.